The night was shrouded in a thick, impenetrable fog that seemed to swallow everything in its path. It was a night like any other in our forgotten town, where the only sound was the distant hum of crickets and the occasional hoot of an owl. But I knew that this night was different. This was the night the ghost train was said to appear. The rumors had always been there, whispered among the townsfolk in hushed tones. They spoke of an ancient locomotive that would roll into the abandoned station on the outskirts of town, a place where time seemed to stand still. The station was a relic of a bygone era, a crumbling monolith of rust and decay, overgrown with vines and weeds. They said the train would only appear under the most ominous of conditions: a full moon, thick fog, and a silence so profound it was almost deafening. I had always dismissed the stories as mere fantasy, a way to keep curious kids like me from wandering too close to the tracks. But tonight, I felt an inexplicable pull, a morbid curiosity that drew me to the station like a moth to a flame. As I stood alone in the fog-shrouded station, the only sound was the soft crunch of gravel beneath my feet. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decay, and I could feel the weight of the night bearing down on me. I had heard the stories, of course. Everyone in town had. They said that if you listened closely enough, you could hear the train before it arrived. A low, distant rumble like the growl of a beast awakening from a deep slumber. At first, I heard nothing. Just the silence, oppressive and heavy. But then, faintly at first, I began to pick up the sound. A low, thrumming vibration that seemed to emanate from the very earth itself. It was a sound that sent shivers down my spine, a sound that made my heart pound in my chest. The ghost train was coming. The sound grew, building into a cacophony of screeching metal and groaning wood, like the very fabric of the night was being torn apart. My heart was racing, pounding in my chest like a blacksmith's hammer, as I realized the train was closing in. The rumbling transformed into the unmistakable rhythm of wheels against the tracks, a sound that seemed to shake the very foundations of the earth. I should have turned back, should have fled into the darkness, but something held me there, transfixed by a morbid fascination. A part of me needed to see it for myself, to gaze upon the horror that was said to ride the rails. And then, like a specter from the depths of hell, the train emerged from the fog, its black and ancient form looming over me like a monolith. Its headlights cast an eerie glow, barely illuminating the tracks ahead, like two glowing eyes staring into the void. The train looked twisted, as though it had been forged in some infernal furnace, its exterior scarred and dented like the skin of a beast. The windows were clouded like veils shrouding the faces of the damned, and I could feel the weight of secrets and terrors hidden within. There was no conductor, no passengers visible, just the old train, waiting. The door opened with a hiss, like the sound of a snake's warning, and I froze, my heart locked in my chest. Inside, shadows seemed to writhe and twist, dark shapes that defied the laws of reality, like living darkness itself. I could feel them watching me, their cold, dead eyes boring into my soul. There was a pull, a siren's call that beckoned me closer, a feeling that was both repulsive and irresistible. I knew what the story said. Anyone who boarded the ghost train was never seen again. But curiosity can be a fatal disease, and I was infected. Against my better judgment, I took a step closer, and then another, until I was standing at the threshold of the train, staring into the abyss. As I stepped into the train, the door closed behind me with a deafening thud, like the sound of a tombstone being lowered into place. The interior was a labyrinth of twisted time, a realm where the laws of reality were distorted and warped. Dust-covered seats lined the walls, their cracked leather creaking in the dim light. Old luggage, worn and torn, hung from the racks like the remnants of a forgotten civilization. But it was the passengers that truly unsettled me. They sat, motionless and silent, like statues in a macabre museum. Their eyes were empty, their faces gaunt and hollow, as if they had been drained of all life and vitality. Some wore clothing from bygone eras, their attire a testament to the train's timeless nature. Others seemed even older, their faces etched with the lines of centuries, their eyes sunken and dead. I found a seat near the back, my grip on the armrest tightening as a creeping sense of dread settled over me. The train lurched forward, its jerky motion sending a wave of nausea through my stomach. My eyes wandered to a man across from me, his face a death's mask of gaunt cheeks and sunken eyes. He looked as though he had been waiting for an eternity, his presence a testament to the train's dark and sinister power. And he wasn't the only one. Others too seemed altered, their bodies warped and twisted by some unseen force. One woman's hair fell out in strands, her eyes empty and glazed as she swayed gently with the motion of the train. Another man's skin was stretched taut over his skull, his eyes bulging from their sockets like those of a corpse. I felt a chill run down my spine as I realized that I was trapped in a living nightmare, a world where time had no meaning, and the laws of reality were twisted and distorted. The fog outside grew denser, a suffocating shroud that obscured the world beyond. It was as though we were hurtling through a void, a realm where time and space were twisted and distorted. I gazed out the window, but my reflection stared back at me, distorted and grotesque. And then, I saw him, a figure in black, with eyes that burned with an otherworldly intensity. His mouth was twisted into a macabre grin, a smile that seemed to mock me with its cruelty. I blinked, and he was gone, but the image lingered, seared into my mind like a branding iron. I felt a creeping sense of dread as I realized that I was not alone. Shadows moved around me, their presence palpable and menacing. Voices whispered in a language that was both ancient and evil, a cacophony of terror that seemed to crawl under my skin. The air grew colder, the chill seeping into my bones like a malevolent force. And then I saw him, the conductor. He was a towering figure, his face hidden beneath a black hat that seemed to absorb the light around him. He glided down the aisle, his movements fluid and unnatural, like a specter from a nightmare. When he reached me, he stopped, his gaze piercing through me like a cold, dead weight. I felt a scream building in my throat, but it was trapped, frozen by fear. "You came willingly," he rasped, his voice like a rusty gate scraping against concrete. "Few do." His words hung in the air, heavy and oppressive, like a physical presence that crushed me beneath its weight. I felt a sense of despair wash over me, a realization that I was trapped, doomed to ride this ghostly train forever. The conductor's hand reached out, his fingers curling towards me like skeletal claws. I was paralyzed, frozen in terror, as he whispered a single word in my ear: "Welcome." The train accelerated to a frenzied pace, the passengers transforming into grotesque, inhuman creatures. The man across from me turned his head, his hollow eyes locking onto mine with an unspeakable horror. His skin cracked and split, revealing a twisted, macabre grin. The others around me began to warp and contort, their faces elongating into twisted, nightmarish visages. I realized with a jolt of terror that they were no longer human. They were part of the train, just as I would soon be. Desperation clawed at my mind like a madman, but I was trapped, held down by the suffocating shadows. The conductor watched, his twisted smile widening into a grotesque, inhuman grin. "You wanted to see the ghost train," he sneered, his voice like a rusty gate scraping against concrete. "And now you're part of it." The windows fogged over, the world outside vanishing into a dark, abyssal void. I could feel the train slipping further from reality, sinking into some dark, hidden dimension where the laws of sanity no longer applied. The passengers around me began to chant in low, guttural voices, their words filling me with an unspeakable dread. My vision blurred, and a strange, creeping numbness settled over me. My mind began to fade, my memories slipping away one by one. Just as I thought I was lost forever, I heard a faint, distant voice. It was a whisper, a mere echo, but it was familiar. "Wake up," it said. I clung to it, using it to pull myself back from the brink of madness. The conductor's face twisted in rage as he realized what was happening. I could feel his grip loosening, the shadows retreating like a dark, malevolent tide. With one final desperate effort, I tore myself free. The train's walls began to crumble, the shadows screaming in fury as the world around me shifted and distorted. And then, I was back at the station, standing alone on the empty platform. The train was gone, leaving only an oppressive, crushing silence in its wake. I stumbled away, my heart pounding in my chest, my mind reeling with the horrors I had witnessed. The ghost train was real, and I had been its passenger. To this day, I can still hear its whistle in the distance on foggy nights, calling to those who dare approach. But I know the truth. I know that the train is not just a myth, but a portal to a dark, hellish realm where the damned souls of the dead are trapped forever. And I know that I will never be able to escape its grasp.